Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast. I'm your host, Josh Grivy, here for a brief introduction before we continue the October Mega Marathon. You guys know the deal. 31 days, 31 pods. Before today's awesome episode and our amazing guests, a little business. Everyone, if you want all 31 days, you got to go support the show on Patreon. Patreon.com/FilmAlchemistPod is the absolute best and most important way to help support the show. But also, we do a ton of awesome stuff over there that makes it fun and worth your while. So this month particularly, we have the 2 Patreon exclusives that our listeners get a vote on. You get your feature-length commentary. We have a Tales from the Crypt miniseries that we're working our way through. A lot of fun stuff over there, trying to work very hard to make it worth your time and support. So especially after all the work that goes into the October Mega Marathon, if you'd be so kind, Patreon.com/FilmAlchemistPod. We appreciate the support. The email, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Film Alchemist. You can get at us on all the socials. We're over there if you want to find us there. We're easy to get a hold of. That's what I'm trying to say. Another important thing you can do this month, there's 2 free things you can do to really help the pod out. 1, make sure you're leaving 5-star ratings and reviews wherever you find podcasts. That is very helpful for us as we pursue this October journey. Try to catch all of the horror-loving, movie-loving people that we can this month. So go help us defeat the algorithm over there. Also, if you have horror fans in your life, you have people that are watching a lot of spooky season movies, please send them a direct message, a text, a DM, however you communicate. Let them know that we're out here and what we're doing, and we'll take it from there. We appreciate that very much. All right, today's episode's a very special one. I'm very excited for this episode. Not only is it the return of our dear friend Rachel Reeves, she's been one of our guests since she first appeared doing an episode on Predator. I love her writing, where she interviews a lot of composers, talks about the movies or the music that's attached to movies that we all love. She's also on all kinds of podcasts. Right here, I've got a list of them. The Losers Club, the Halloweenies Pod, Pod and the Pendulum, the Girls on the Boys, or Girls on the Boys. So Rachel is so busy. She's working all the time. Everything she puts out is just awesome, high-quality content. And what I really appreciate about Rachel is just how euphoric it is to get to talk to her all the time. Charming, witty, funny. Just an incredible chat every time we're lucky enough to get the chance to talk. And I can't believe she keeps coming back and hanging out with us, but by God, I'm glad that she does. Wishing Rachel all of the success. If you check the show notes, you can find links to Rachel's stuff down there. Make sure you're following her everywhere and getting more Rachel in your life. You'll thank me later. She chose to talk about Orphan First Kill, a prequel to Orphan years after the first one. I actually have a connection with the film. A dear friend of mine, Dave Coggeshall, wrote the script, which you will hear me argue is really the MVP of the film. So this was a great talk about a really fun, wild movie. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I enjoyed it. Without any further yammering, one of those words you can pick. 31 days, 31 ill-used words. Rachel Reeves and Orphan First Kill. Welcome back to the show. Our friend, returning one of our favorite people on Earth, Rachel Reeves. Welcome back. Thank you for making the time.
Oh my God, you're so welcome. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and I'm just so happy to be back here doing the Halloween thing. So thanks for having me back.
I was telling you off air, I was like, sometimes the franchises can get to be a slog. We did Texas Chainsaw this year, Hellraiser last year. You get to those hairy entries and you're like, why? Why do we do this? And then all our friends come back and you're like, that's exactly why we do it. Yep. So would you like to introduce yourself to people who haven't heard all of your amazing episodes in the Film Alchemist back catalog? Let them know who you are, what you're doing, and where they can find you online.
Sure. Hi. Hello. I'm Rachel Reeves. I am a writer, sometimes pretty frequent podcaster. You can check me out on the Halloweenies or the Losers Club, Pod and the Pendulum, or the Girls on the Boys, where we talk about the boys. And you can find me on Twitter, I guess, at the Vine. It's just at Vinyl Girl,
Yes,
GRRRL, or Instagram at the Vinyl Girl. And
that's right.
yeah, that's where you can
You
find me.
really undersold yourself. You are becoming just an amazing podcast presence right now.
Oh, thanks.
It's been awesome to watch you from afar. It's great that you still come back. So you, as always, picked an absolute banger. Would you like to introduce the movie you chose and why?
Oh, absolutely. So today we're talking about the 2022 classic, Orphan First Kill.
Yes, I
Yay.
fucking love this movie. And I was telling you, I was laughing when you picked this movie out. You know, to me, it just goes on a list, and my brain goes into like, we got to get this done. It never dawned on me to reach out. One of my dear friends, Dave Cogashaw, who played first base on my softball team, right? A guy that I love, I would jump in front of a car for. He hired me to write on Thousand Ways to Die. I've known him for a long time. He fucking wrote this movie. And
It was right. It was right there. It
I
was
think
right
the
there.
unsung hero of this movie is Dave's script. This script is fucking great. It's kind of it's an interesting movie because it's a prequel
Mm-hmm.
where she's clearly grown up. So you have all the technical challenges of how do you make her still fit into the gimmick of an 8-year-old girl who's really like a 40-year-old woman who wants to have sex with dads.
Oh yeah.
Fine, you have that basically. The other problem this movie faces is what do you do with Esther once we know the reveal? Once we know Esther's secret, how do you make another one of those and make it interesting? In fucking hell, man, Dave really figured it out. Like, he really found lightning in a bottle. And I actually like this one maybe even more than the first one. I really enjoy what this movie's doing.
Oh my gosh, it shocked me. So I had
Yeah,
never. Okay, let me preface this. My introduction to this. I never had seen the first Orphan
right.
before this came out, and the thing was like I knew the twists,
Mhm.
going into the original Orphan, so I kind of was just like, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it, whatever.
Right.
And then when this came out, I was like, all right, it's time. So I watched it and was like, actually, dang, that actually was super fun and really good. And even knowing the twist, it still worked for me.
Oh, yeah.
And then going into this one, I was kind of excited because, yeah, like you said, it's like, how do you do this? What do you do?
Yeah,
I
how
don't
could we
understand.
possibly care
Yeah,
about this journey?
how is this going to work? But I had heard people saying such amazing things like the day after it came out, right? So I was like, well, I
Yeah.
gotta,
And
just check it out.
spoiler alert. I
Hmm.
guess I already kind of ruined it. If you haven't seen Orphan, which is like damn near 15 years old now, but
Yeah.
spoilers for this one because I guess it is newer than I remember. You know, it's like that COVID and anything right after COVID, like time doesn't matter. So in my
Yeah.
brain, this movie is like 6 years old. You
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So yeah, spoilers if you haven't seen it. Um,
Yeah.
but it really is an incredible trick they pull. I didn't ask Dave, but I'm for sure that he was a big fan of the documentary The Imposter if you haven't seen that movie. Because it's one of those things, you're watching the movie and they start doing this and you're like, there's no fucking way. Like, I was almost mad at the TV watching it at the start. It's
Hmm.
like, there's no fucking way. We started with this cool like Russian escape, right? We'll get to that. But I was just mad. I was like, there's no fucking way. I'm a dad. I have a kid. And you're like, even 4 or 5 years later, like, why is my daughter Russian? What's happening, right? Like, why does
Yeah.
she not remember stuff? And it's almost aggravating. You're like, this is just one of those really dumb horror movie things that I have to swallow.
Right.
And when they leverage that and twist it on you, right, dude, the narrative jujitsu, it is so euphoric. It is such a cathartic moment. You're like, because, and that's the other thing, going back and watching it again and watching
Hmm.
Julia Stiles' reactions and listening to what she's saying in every moment. I mean, it's such a fun rewatch. Like, the second time is even so much more euphoric.
Yeah, it's amazing that it works the first time, and even once you know it, it doesn't spoil the fun of the movie. Like, it still
Mm-mm.
works knowing it because you're able to see things differently, understand things differently, and that's such a clever trick. And there's so many things about this movie that should not work.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen
Yeah.
it not work in so many films. Like, oh my God, the origin story prequel, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, don't need it. And so I thought that's what we were going to have here, but I was intrigued just by like what you were talking about, the time span, the age gap. Like, this shouldn't work, but they let you know pretty quickly in that opening scene. It's like, oh, this is not as bad as I thought. Like they're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that Isabel Furman is clearly not as young as she used to be, like that
Right.
happens, but somehow they're able to pull it off.
Yeah,
And
everyone's got
so,
like Munster platform shoes. They have some young bodies from behind. It it really becomes pretty seamless,
yeah.
right? Like you just watch it and you just fall right back in with Esther.
Mm-hmm.
When we start, right, we're restarting at the Lena Klammer, I think was her real Russian name, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
love that scene, like just watching her when the art therapist, right? She's like, I come here to help these people. And she just sees her in that room and she's like, oh, are you someone's daughter? She cannot process
Mm-hmm.
that this is the dangerous patient they're talking about. And just seeing her even in shadows, it never dawned on me how much I loved Esther. Like how much
Right?
Orphan, the first movie, actually was something I really cared about. It felt like a movie I was like, why the fuck would I want more of that?
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw her in the shadows, I was like, fuck, she's just a great character. And Isabel Furman is just, or Isabella Furman, just fucking amazing. I don't know which one's right. I can never remember names. But she is incredible. She actually was in another movie I watched this year that I loved, The Novice, about like a
Mm.
rowing team. And it's another of those
Oh,
movies like, I don't give a fuck about Ivy League rowing. Like, what? But she's so fucking captivating when you
she,
watch her.
yeah, she is. And like, from what I understand about this movie, she was kind of the final push to get it made. Like she was like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Like I would like to come back and do
Yeah.
another one. And apparently that kind of like finally greased the wheels enough to get them going. And I love that she's so dedicated and like enthusiastic about this character as everybody else, because that you're going to see that enthusiasm, you're going to see that injected into the character. For somebody else to come back this many years later and kind of do this sort of off the wall horror character, it could just kind of ring false a little bit, like, all right, I
Yeah.
just need the paycheck or whatever. But she's so dedicated, she's in on the joke, and she shows up. And
Yeah.
so I love that about her, that she is oddly attached to this psychotic
Yeah.
little maniac.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than when you see people come back for like the I Need a Paycheck movie
Oh, it's
and
so
they don't
sad.
love it. And you're like, now it kind of tarnishes my love for the original one.
Mm-hmm.
And this one just right off the bat lets you know. It just tonally, the Russian stuff and the escape and the fact that she's trained this other insane inmate with candy and like a code word to attack. And it gives us a chance to kind of reset into how meticulous she is. Because when you
Yeah.
watch the first one, if you get further away from it, right, it plays as she's just a really smart, evil kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find the ending, you're like, oh, she was actually just a grown up. But I think we forget how just insane, maniacally focused on detail she is.
Yeah.
And so I love that about the open of this. That shot when she escapes, right? And the lady's bashing the guy's brains in, and she goes out in the snow, and the windshield wipers go, and she just does the shh. I was like, oh my God, like she is an iconic horror character. It just a perfect way to refeed us into that story, right? And again, it gets to this point that's fucking insane and has you almost yelling at your TV. But watching her, you're like, why does this lady get out of the car? Of course she's going to be in the car. Of course she's going to brain her. But watching Esther take the steps, right? It becomes this kind of like almost this weird like James Bond segment for a moment.
Yeah.
That I honestly, I couldn't believe I was eating it up. When they did the 2007 Russia or Estonia or whatever, I was like, oh, give me a fucking break.
Mm-hmm.
And then I fucking loved it.
No, yeah, I loved it too. You just see how like manipulative and sly she is, and even people that know how dangerous she is, like that disgusting perverted like guard, like she's able to get in their heads.
That motherfucker.
And yeah, and like everything, she's just waiting for that moment, and she doesn't waste any time. Like it's not like she's gonna draw it out super long. Like the second she gets that guy in the room, like he's dead, and she's like, all right, I got my bag, I've got my go bag, I'm out. And it's just like, it's incredible to see her just like, all right, this is it, later, the second she can.
That guy, it's one of those perfect horror movie moments where you're like, this guy probably is a pedophile.
Yeah.
But now he thinks he's found like an acceptable way to do this, but it's still cringy because he's trading like thing she needs. She's like, you can come in. I want to do something nice for you. You're like, ew, ew, ew. Like, you're just grossed out.
Yep,
and when he does that thing, he kind of looks at her. He's like, this is wrong. I know she's hardcore. But he has this moment where he like leans his head back and like closes his eyes.
Yeah,
like he's in a
good.
John Hughes movie. And you're like, oh no, here we go.
Yeah.
Like you get what you, it's really awesome. And I love the fact that I think it's the guy who runs the place, right? He's talking to the new art therapist, and he talks about how she got her wounds from pulling on her restraints. And
Yeah.
he has a line I love, and it becomes kind of this theme of the movie is we didn't fully appreciate the depths of her will to be free.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a wonderful little kind of inspiration for this hyper-focused machine that we're watching for the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just one of those you kind of immediately know you're like, this is going to be much more than I anticipated.
Oh,
and then
totally.
it puts you in this thing where you're like, oh, wait, no, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. And then they get you back. It's really a very fascinating series of decisions this movie makes.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about like just her desire to be free, because I think, yes, it's like free, but it's like she doesn't like people seeing her as an adult. It's like she like almost like when the art therapist comes in and she's like seeing her as a child, she's oh, why would you think that? And because it's like she doesn't know who she is, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's actually true, but it's kind of like she likes being seen like that in a weird, she's just twisted.
It's bizarre, right? Because it's her defense mechanism that lets her get close enough to do crimes. Right? There's a comic book I used to read a lot called Fables, and it was about all the fairy tale characters live in this like brownstone in New York, right? And they kind of go between the worlds because this creature's destroying like fairy tale worlds, right? Well, one of the characters is Pinocchio, and the joke of the comic is that he's always just drinking, and he's mad because he can't get laid because he always is stuck as a real boy.
Yeah.
And so he's just furiously mad that he can't have sex all the time. And Esther's kind of like the darker real world version of that, where she wants everyone to not assume that she's coming so she can take them out if they want.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow has this real attachment to fathers, right? Because they talk about she used to steal and run. And then the reason she's in the asylum now is because one family she wouldn't run out on, and they're like, we don't know why.
Yeah.
And later, Julia Stiles asks her the same thing, and it's not until you realize she has a real daddy complex.
Yeah, there's something about that.
It's a really extra headspace to explore.
Yeah, there's something about that daddy-daughter relationship, I think, that really just, scratches a particular itch for her, that it pulls her back in when everything else is telling her to leave. Like, we see that in the movie, right? Like, she's like, all right, they know who I am. The jig is up. Like, I'm out. And then turns around and is like, well, but actually, but like, what if something's here? Like, she comes back against her better judgment because this father is so sweet and actually thinks that she is this long lost abducted daughter. I think the story there is wild to begin with, but he really believes it.
Well, because you're watching it, and they're like, the first time Julia Stiles, they're walking out of his fencing club or whatever. Gunner's some fucking kind of dipshit fencer, right?
Rich asshole,
yeah, just rich asshole stuff. It's like there's no one who's ever looked cool or tough fencing, right? And like they're just there like clapping, and you're like, ugh, gross. I hate these people. And they come out and they see the detective, and it's like, what is she? What? And I think Julia Stiles says, "What is he doing here?"
Yeah,
and she looks concerned. It's like they found Esther, and you watch her face drop. But we don't realize that. We think this is a journey of parents who are finding their long lost kid, right?
Yeah,
because she like Googled it and found missing kid. So we don't realize yet that she's in on it, right? And so there is this, but Julia Stiles says it later, and it's kind of this beautiful writing moment where you're giving yourself story armor while doing a kind of classic horror movie start of your act two, which is tell people the story they want to believe, right?
Right. Yeah.
And she's helping teach Esther be a better fucking criminal, right? She's giving her better weapons with which to do as they're kind of doing this two-man show. But that's what Esther thinks she's doing at the start. Like, of course that father, it's incomprehensible.
Yeah.
That a Russian woman who is 31 but looks 12 found your daughter online after she murdered all of her art therapists, got
Mm-hmm.
from Russia to America, and is here. Like, what an audacious scheme. Like, of course they're
Yeah.
going to believe that.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's one of those, they say you got to give every movie one dumb thing to make it work. And you're like, that's a pretty fucking dumb one until it's not.
Yeah.
Until it's not. And then the dad, though, to your point, he's so sweet and empathetic. It's such a great performance. And you're like, yeah, I'd be like that dad, too. I'd be like, this is better. This is, it's like a less sad Pet Cemetery. Dead is not better, right? Missing's not better. I just want this kid back. And I love it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, maybe she doesn't quite look like how you imagine. Maybe
the Russian thing is throwing me off.
Yeah, the accent thing, but like, I can't imagine, feeling like that and wanting to believe so hard that you're willing to kind of look past so many things because you want your kid back. And I think that that's something that the movie knows. Right. And it's like, so we're kind of making excuses for him and Julia Stiles, the wife, because it's like, all right, that makes sense. I can see why you would want to overlook all of these little tiny, tiny red flags, I guess. Like,
right.
Are you actually this kid? I don't know. Maybe we should do a DNA test. They never really explore that option, but I guess that's not
because eventually the detective's just like, what exists? Thumbprints. And you're like,
right.
That's pretty good. Like, you think that someone at Interpol or whoever is like human trafficking Esther over. I guess probably because they're rich, maybe they just private jetted it. And Julia Stiles, because she wants to cover it up, she's like, all right, I just got to make this work. Yeah. So they do legal workarounds, but it is kind of
maybe.
That seems far-fetched, but okay, we'll go with it. And it's kind of funny because, again, everyone in the house, every scene that has the family, they're all lying in different ways except for the dad. And so when you go back and rewatch it, it's so fucking fun to sit and watch those scenes of the dad thinking he's back with his family, his life is complete. He's like, I feel young again. I feel passion again. And watching all three of the others kind of trying to pick their lane with which to perpetrate their lies. It's fucking awesome. It's really well laid out.
Oh, yeah, that's like my favorite thing. Like, so once the twist does come, that dun 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 dun, Julia knows all along that Esther,
when the detective says, she's like, even my mom doesn't know it's not me, and the detective goes, yes, she does. And then she fucking shoots him. I remember watching it and having a literal audible gasp on my couch, like, what the fuck?
No, me too. Did you see it coming? Because I did not.
No, I had no fucking idea. And honestly, I should have.
Yeah.
Because, again, you're like, as in a screenwriter's headspace, you're like, this is so fucking outlandish.
Yeah.
There's no fucking way. Something's wrong. But I was so enjoying the ride and performances that I stopped wondering what's wrong. And again, if you're watching, you're like, this movie's so well written and thought out. There's no way they're just doing this very lazy, the rich people are too dumb to know.
Yeah.
So, like, I should have fucking known. I should have seen it. But I was so fucking engaged. I honestly was gobsmacked.
Yeah. And that's when I like officially was like, all right, I'm in love with this movie because it knew that. It knew
and
that.
And if that moment didn't work,
mm-hmm.
What does this movie become?
No, totally. But like they knew, I think, that fans would go into it having pretty low expectations. Mm-hmm. They knew, based off of what we knew from the first Orphan, that like, I don't know, it's logical to just kind of assume that like, oh, we already know this story because they kind of talk about it a little bit in that movie.
Another rich family got duped by it. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So it makes sense that like that's kind of where our head would be because that's the information that we have to go off of. And so by kind of playing with all of those expectations and just kind of subverting them in such a fun, clever way. Also, Julia Stiles, like, you don't necessarily expect her to be this kind of character.
Yeah, who knew? She really came out of, like, just dropped one on us. Like, I didn't know she still had that in her.
Totally.
Wonderful performance.
Yeah, so by using her kind of as a person to kind of subvert those expectations, I think, as well, was just brilliant, I think, on all levels. And then basically you have three horrible people, and just kind of at this weird, like, back and forth standoff of who, this battle of the baddies. And this poor dad is the only one who doesn't know.
Dude, it's crazy because, they cut to after she kills the detective. She's got her little gun and she goes, that is beyond fucked up, right? Because she hears Esther's story and she's like, you're a criminal, small person who's old and you escaped the sergeant. She's kind of laying it out, right?
Yeah.
And when Esther goes, wait, Esther didn't disappear.
Yeah.
And the mom's like, what was I supposed to lose my other kid because some, sibling roughhousing went out of control? And so you're like, oh, so not only is Julia Stiles just a stone cold murderer, that little fucking fencing guy, Gunner, he fucking killed his sister. So when he's acting like a piece of shit to Esther and just hanging out and doing, his party or whatever, like he doesn't even give a fuck. He's already killed Esther once.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's sitting there calling her a psycho and a freak. And you're like, meanwhile, you're the one who murdered your fucking sister and made mom throw in the fucking hole. I mean, it explodes in this. Like, now your brain is like, wait, what about that? What about that? And she just kind of goes into this is what I do. I clean up after my kids. And she has this great line. She's like, well, Esther can't disappear twice. And she's like, you chose this role. You're going to fucking play it. And I was like, there is this thing they keep shoehorning in, which I don't know if it ever like manifests very well in the rest of the story, but they keep shoehorning in the like her husband matters because his family came over on the Mayflower.
Yeah.
And they say it like 5 times, like, we matter. You're an immigrant.
Well,
I was like,
and they're rich, right? Like, we're rich white people. We matter. So,
and I was like, I believe they talk like that. I was like, it's kind of inconsequential to the story. I thought that was going to have some kind of like payoff, like the skulls or something.
Yeah.
But there is a thing because Gunner's even like, I'm a rich white guy. My family matters. What are they going to believe, the immigrant? And I was like, oh, yeah, there's no precedent for Americans loving reality shows, talking shit and drudging the skeletons up of rich family. We would love that. We would absolutely listen to her. It'd be on it. Nancy Grace would do like 55 episodes in a row.
But I think it does like lend itself to the believability that these people would feel so entitled, would feel so like arrogant that they could get away with this.
That's right.
Like the fact that they could just take this child, and how long they're planning on just like raising this 31-year-old woman for forever. Like they're just thinking that this is going to work.
In like 5 years, Dad's going to be like, she's not getting bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, it must have been whatever happened in Russia. It's like, now he's like got to do a Stranger Things, like Hoop and go over Hopper and find out what happened in Russia. They're just going one beat at a time. She's like, my dead child has just shown back up and has changed the equation. And she just jumps into that. Yeah. Like, I'll just solve this problem.
Yeah.
She's like, we'll go buy some nice shit and we'll solve this problem like always.
Yep.
It's pretty awesome because, again, you're taking our iconic movie monster, Esther, who we've done this journey with. And now there's this visual motif where she's trapped like that mouse and she keeps being like, I'm sorry you have to live here. Watching Esther, who is the monster, become kind of our sympathetic. It turns into like children in the or flowers in the attic or whatever, where like she's fucking stuck in the house now. And there's just this kind of like mental warfare of like, how long are we all willing to keep this ruse going that becomes so just demented and wonderful?
Yeah. But what I appreciate about that is I don't think they're trying to make her sympathetic. Like I feel like we've seen that a lot where like in some of these films where we have like these villains and then they try to like make us sympathize with them and like make excuses for them or kind of like, okay, but why? And what I appreciate here is like, no, they're all just awful. Like she's still a monster, but now she's just kind of met her match unexpectedly with, you know, Julia, Trish. She's just Julia Stiles and Gunner, you know, just like, so they're just all bad. It's not trying to say that like, oh, this is why she became a bad person. It's not making apologies for her, which I think is wonderful. Sometimes
Godzilla and King Kong just both step on your house, right? Yeah. You don't have to pick a winner. They both suck. It's just little things, right? Like I hate mommy's cooking. Or then when she's telling the sheriff, like, she's been trying to hurt herself. You watch the chess match. The coolest, obviously, is, when the mouse dies from the sleeping pills. And so she puts the fucking rat or the mouse in the smoothie. I had forgotten that gag was coming. And I was on my, I did I forgot. And I was like, what a fucking, and see, that's like really good horror movie shit to me. Because it's working on so many story levels. And it is just gross, but it's not so graphic and in your face, right? It's not cheap. It's just this real fuck you between two characters that I felt in my soul. I fucking loved that moment.
Yeah, and it's the fact that we're in on the joke. Like we're in, like we as the audience know everything, and then this dad, Alan, doesn't, and so we're like, oh god, like he doesn't. Like it's so awkward, intense, and so just the fact that we know what's happening between them, but he doesn't. It's just like
he's just sitting there eating his breakfast. She's throwing the switch on the disposal.
Oh, so great! Like I mean, it's a movie, so it's just funny that like you would even feel that way, but I think that's what happens is just to see them just trying to pretend like this is normal life, which that house has to be so awkward all the time.
Yeah, you're like, this is going to be the norm for at least 10 more years. Like, we're going to be in this kind of warfare. Because they're both monsters, but neither of them can say, hey, man, like, we got to be cool. Because they can't, they're not those kind of people. They get what they want all the time. Because it's funny if you think about the movie in context, right? Yeah. We get our cold open, and the detective getting killed even is fairly inconsequential. Like, there's not a lot of gratifying horror moments.
Right.
It's just real kind of storytelling and performance gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of amazing how long they're able to keep that engagement up without having to drop into, oh, here's another person they're going to kill. Oh, Esther's got to kill 3 of his teenage friends, right? Yeah. Just the deployment of things like this mouse and the reveal, they really get a lot of run, and the tension runs fucking high for most of the movie.
Yeah, no, I think the pacing is really great because you've got kind of like these 3 little chunks, right? You have her like in Estonia, we got like that little chunk, and then we kind of are like following along in that little chunk where we think that she's just deceiving them.
The goofball Lifetime movie chunk.
Yeah, like trying to figure out like if they know or like how that's going to work. And then that like third act, which is like an hour into the movie when kind of that final twist comes in. And then it's just it just keeps cranking it up, and then by the time that comes out, like it's just so well executed to keep you engaged, so it doesn't ever really feel like it's a slog, and you're like, okay, where is this going? And it is interesting thinking about it. It's like there's like these horror-ish elements, but ultimately, it's not really like that kind of movie. Like it's a horror movie, but is it a slash?
Yeah,
it's just
because you're like, it's not as much like a slasher, it's more like single white female,
right?
Like you're like
weird thriller.
It's more thrillery, right? Like there are moments like when she's gonna shove them in front of the train, it's like, you little bitch, you thought you could kill, and you're like, all right, now they're back to doing like movie monster stuff. When she stabs the detective, that feels all right, maybe it's a horror movie. No, we're doing the thriller thing. It's just, I think that's just it just found its own lane and just kind of goes.
I love it. Yeah.
And it is horrifying. Like the idea of an imposter in your house, like that's the wild thing. Cause that documentary is the same thing where it's like, there's no fucking chance they thought that was the kid. And so then you have to ask, why are they bringing them in? And this movie just puts a pen on it and plays it out really well. Right. Like they're just like, because the cop brings her home. She does her little, she's a maniac. She's got her glasses and her lipstick.
Smoking.
She's living her Barbie moment, right? Which I fucking love. And she gets brought home. And Julia Stiles just like, I can't even do this for 2 more hours. We're going to kill her ass now. And it's got to happen because Dad's on the train. And it's like, so I was like, how is there not like an hour left of this? I was so ready for it to gear up. And it wraps up fucking quick.
It does. And it wraps up. Like, I love it when, franchises or, I know there's only 2 of them, so it's not really a franchise yet, but like when it's connecting those threads. And so it's like finally tying in more to the story that we know of from the first Orphan with the house fire, and like, how that ends, like they all die. So it's just kind of like,
it's kind of wild. So like 2 of those bodies are not in the fire.
Yeah.
Like, how did they answer away the 2 fucking splattered dead bodies on the sidewalk?
Yeah, great.
And then you're like, that other skeleton has a fencing foil stuck in its ribs? That's weird.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. Just don't think about it. An arrow and a a
Yeah. Oh,
fencing
and
thing
a
and
crossbow. Yeah, for good measure, a crossbow bolt.
yep. Yeah.
That was awesome. When that little fuck, because his mom, he throws her down the stairs. He's like, I didn't mean to. You're like, that's a throwback to the
Yeah.
last time he did this. So watching him watch his like former crime scene was cool. And then when mom's like, go finish it, and he grabs his little dumbass fencing helmet and his little stick, his little foil, I was like, what a loser. Like, I can't wait for this guy to get, I was like, that has to be the pussiest kind of like, I'm going to go kill someone.
Yeah.
I feel like I would just laugh. If someone came at me in a fencing outfit, I would just not be able to not laugh. Like, it's the least intimidating of all of the slasher kind of setups you can wear.
Is there a fencer? Is there like any like weird, I feel like there has to be, right? Is there like some like 80s like D-list like slasher where there's like a fencer? I know that there's one
there's a
where
weird
they're like,
one of those
like a pole vaulter or something.
Yeah, right. There was a Shakespeare adaptation they did where they had rooftop fencing to the death in one of them. And I was like, this is really like people are drinking champagne. It's like to the death. I can't remember what it was. It was no, it was Hamlet. It was the Hamlet remake with Ethan Hawke, I think. And they have to like fence to the death. And I was like, God, fencing's just never cool. Like, it's just like the most uncool. It's like, aha! It's like watching adult tag.
I know they're sharp, but they like bet. Yeah, anyways.
Points.
Like, yeah.
But you never see those guys like bleeding out and they're like, I got to get this final point. And they're like bleeding like, wow, that's very heroic and champion. Like,
yes.
It's just like, aha! Like they're poking each other.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, that's fine, I guess. But yeah, you're like, Esther's going to fuck this kid up. And that's the other thing you see is she's taking on 2-on-1. I fucking lost it laughing when all she has to do to defeat Julia Stiles is spit on her. And she's just like her inner Karen comes out. She's like, I can't fucking believe you had the guts.
How dare you?
yeah, exactly. How dare? It's like, maybe finish the murder and then clean up. Like, just wipe it all. But she stops and goes to the sink. And then she's like, go finish it. And he's like, well, I did the last one on accident. Like, I don't handle things. And watching them, like, in those moments of their status is always protected, you're like, Esther's going to gobble them up. Like, it's over.
Oh, yeah.
It was so fucking fun how that played out.
Yeah. It's just so funny. And so this is also going to date me, I think, a little bit, but I think maybe you'll know. But there's something that I really love about this movie. So when Gunnar, this little douchey kid, was like out with all his friends in the backyard and they're like drinking beers and being all cool, so a Juliana Theory song plays. And like,
really?
I do love them. Like, I was just like, really loved them, like in high school and stuff. And I was like, that is such a weird, interesting song choice.
Right.
Like, to be in this movie. Like, I feel like that's a little bit of a deep cut. So I investigated a little bit, and I don't know if you know this, but like talking about people in the credits that you like know but didn't know, but like knew, but like, oh yeah, I should have probably said something to this guy. So the composer, Brett, I don't know how you say it, Datar, he was in the Juliana Theory, and now he composed this. He composed the score, and also Chris Dudley from Under Oath worked on it. So I love that there's
I knew Under Oath well,
yeah, like these like.
I like that. I'm gonna get some royalty checks for the boys. You know?
like these like emo kids like doing the score for this like super silly like horror movie, and that just like makes me love this film even more. So that's awesome. weird little nugget.
Pickup. I never even thought, like, it never dawned on me. I was just like, oh, they're high school kids listening to high school shit.
Yeah.
Did not pick it up at all.
If you ever wondered like what happened to those cute emo boys that were in those bands, well, I mean, I know Under Oath still out there killing it, but otherwise they're probably composing the score for these insane, crazy horror movies.
That's amazing. Yeah, just great. I love the attention to detail. One of the scenes in the finale that really got to me.
Yeah,
I love that because they do this classic, like they're kind of fighting, and you're like, Julia Stiles just beat the shit out of her.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like the Chucky thing. It's like, I know she's 31, but proportionately, she still weighs 70 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because my kids were watching this with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And watching it, my two sons are they're like kind of knuckleheaded boys, right? They're like kind of hardcore. They watch pro wrestling and a lot of sports. And they both started looking at me. And I was just like, no. I was like, no, you can't fucking beat me up. Don't even try. And my little 5-year-old runs and just double like kicked me in the side when I wasn't looking.
Yeah.
And like they watched this movie and Esther gave them hope that they could beat me up. And I had to be like, that's enough. So that was also something I got to experience. Why?
That's you're like, she's not really a child. Like she's really a full-grown adult. It's just perspective shots, you guys.
Like, but yeah, watching this movie, my kids were inspired. They're like, because I know it's a thing. Like when I was a kid, eventually you have to fight your dad. That's how you become a man. Eventually, you and your dad will stop communicating for 2 years, and then
dogs.
You'll fight each other. Yeah, it was really weird, right? It's like what they always do with lions, right? Like a new alpha comes in and takes over. And I was like, all right, I don't want to fight my dad. It'd be nicer if we could just talk, but I'll start preparing for war. And my kids saw Esther and were like, that day's today. And they're 8 and 5.
That's so funny.
But yeah, I was like, just kill her. But then when they get stuck on because I was a little worried when they went on the roof. But it leads to one of my favorite moments in the film, which is where dad has to make a choice between the two of them. And they're both spouting out these insane stories about the other one.
Yeah.
Like Julia Stiles is hanging on for her life. She's like, she's a Russian 31-year-old dwarf. You're like, wait, what?
The fuck?
Yeah, what? What did you just say? I can't hear you over the blazing
roof.
fire that's burning our home. Yeah. What did you think when he grabbed Esther?
I mean, think about it, though. Like, if he really honestly believed that was his daughter, like, I'm sorry. Do you think that, like, he's going to choose his child or his wife? And this child that, like, he's been searching for and mourning, and, like, it makes sense to me thinking about, like, that. And I think that was kind of the final, like, confirmation where it's, like, he believed 100%. Like, from, like, this whole movie, I don't think he ever doubts her, unless I'm, like, not remembering correctly, but I don't think he ever doubts anything or gets, like, any hint, gives any sort of idea that he doesn't think it's the real Esther. And I think that right there is just like, no, he's going to save this child. And then, but then he finds out that not a child.
Yeah, not quite.
No,
yeah, because Julia Stiles even says, right, we can't lose Esther twice right away.
Yeah.
That was my other thought. I was like, to give him a little benefit of the doubt, I would hope that my wife, as an adult woman, could do some, like, physical maneuvering to try to save herself. Yeah. Or would be stronger to try. I mean, granted, that looked like a big fucking fall and they both splattered at the end, so maybe there was no hope.
Oh, she hits hard, and I love that. Well, okay, I don't love that she hits hard, but, like, I love because it's just like
love when
it's like just very, it's just like very definitive, right?
Yeah, she's not getting up like Michael Myers. She didn't fall on, like, soft grass. She's fucking dead.
Yeah, curbed, like she's done.
Yeah, and I thought if I had one complaint, I was like, I would have liked to see that moment breathe a little more.
Yeah.
And her immediately like, Dad, I'll blow you. And it's like, whoa, what? No, she doesn't say it quite like that. That's a paraphrase. Yeah. That's a paraphrase. But because he makes one of the hardest choices you could imagine. Do I save my wife or kid? And I think my wife and I would agree, save the kid. We've had a good run. We're older, right?
Yeah.
And so he makes this unimaginable choice. And then her denture slides.
Yeah.
And he goes, what? Who are you? And she goes, I did this so we could be together. And he's like, you fucking monster. And I was like, all right, this is very abrupt. I know he's grieving his wife and now he's re-grieving his daughter.
Yeah.
I would have liked for the horror of that moment.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have sat in that a little longer.
Yes. I can see that. I do think so. In the first one, it gets a little weird between the Esther and the dad.
I mean, some of the most uncomfortable watching. Do you ever see that movie with Nicole Kidman, Birth?
No, but I know
Yeah, the story is that there's a young boy who's like kindergarten age, and Nicole Kidman's convinced it's her reincarnated husband.
Oh no.
And wants to be with it. Like it's like, but Esther really is kind of leaping that line in the first one.
Yeah. And it kind of makes sense though, like pairing these together and realizing this comes first. And so maybe like that is going to motivate her to make a move, like a more aggressive move sooner. Yeah.
And you're like, they are both adults. So it's not weird there. And like it's weird, but he doesn't know. Like it's a lot. It's a fucking lot.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a real, for everyone who's like, I don't get why the Woody Allen thing's weird. I'm like this. This is
This
weird.
is why,
When you raise a child and adopt a child, like that's weird. That's really weird. Watch that movie. It's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, they all die. She escapes
Yeah.
again. And I think it's so interesting because we see her, it's lining up with the next one and like, oh, we can send her, like, I know a good orphanage that we can send her to, and like, who wouldn't want to adopt her? And it's like,
Dude.
okay, so this is her story up until like you meet this kid, you're looking for a kid to adopt. Well, actually, I don't know what happened before Estonia. I can't remember what they say happened before this last family, but
So
she was an orphan.
She had found another family. We can put it together that she fell for the man, killed the family. He didn't reciprocate, and it seems like she killed all of them.
So, okay, so this is
in Estonia.
In this movie. Okay, so this is the second family that she's done. Okay,
at least
all right,
it seems like at least, yeah.
Yeah, so somehow this child has gone through 2 whole families, and they are all dead. I can see like that would make me hesitant.
Well, they wouldn't know about Estonia, right? Because that was her other name. But yeah, it's like, but it's hard, right? It's like you see this little girl, you don't have to change the diapers. She's healthy. She can play piano. She draws. She wears weird clothes. You're like, that'd be a red flag. She dressed like one of those China dolls. You're like, that's not my favorite. But that could be orphan shit, right? Like orphans probably don't have a lot of wardrobe dictation. Like I think you would. I think you would adopt her.
It's funny that she continues to like dress like this because all right, 2007. Like she could have totally worn like on her wrists like lots of those like emo like jelly bracelets. And like she could have worn like some chokers or stuff. Like she could have,
chokers were huge.
She could have gone like full scene. Like she didn't have to go like this weird. I guess it plays into her whole like
Shirley Temple fascination,
Estonia gimmick. And,
yeah, see, I thought it's because she was watching Shirley Temple and she's like, "That's how to be a good girl."
Totally.
And you're like, "But those movies are like fucking 100 years old, dude. What are you like?"
Yeah, I guess
if you want to blend in, you go to the mall and you're like, all right, I'm gonna infiltrate the Hot Topic. Yeah, that'll explain away my wounds, and I'll be that card.
Yeah,
I'll be an emotionally unavailable teenager, and then I'll blend in that way.
Yeah,
right. Like she's not the wisest of criminals here.
I think it's safe to say she's got some issues upstairs, and that's okay.
Yeah, there is this weird like she's dressing like a doll or an old lady, but she's an old person playing young. You're like, there's a lot of extra psychosis in the character built in by her decisions.
Yes, but also like as a horror fan, love it. Like icon, because it's like it's part of her thing, right? And like you could dress up like Esther, and like every killer has like its look, and so I love that that's like her look and that it's consistent through these. And that's just her thing because it's so individual. Like I can't necessarily think of another character like this. Like of course we've had like killer kids, and we've had even this director, like so William Brent Bell, he did, I know it's not an actual kid, but I think he did the Boy movies, which I'm not really familiar with.
Brahms.
But
it's like a guy living in the walls. Yeah.
But like I've heard, I was like, I've heard that they're not that bad. And so like we've got those, but like Esther is a whole other bag of tricks.
But Esther, it's funny because we got the complicated. Why is she the way that she is? She wants to fuck all the dads. She's stone cold in her murdering. She's got this, very like laid out, detail oriented mind, which is psychotic. There's all these things, but at the end you boil it down and it's just real fucking simple. She's just evil. Just plain and simple. She's just fucking, that last shot when she's smiling, who wouldn't want to adopt her? And she kind of smiles to herself, and then it slips because we see what she really is. It's like a throwback to Psycho almost, right? When Norman Bates is going through, which one am I now? And it's just all roads lead. She's just fucking evil. Yeah. Right? And it's not like, because I remember when Megan came out, and Megan like took everyone by storm, and I was like, Megan's just a lesser Esther. Because Esther has these extra layers. Still simple. Yeah. Right? She's a misguided, like, I have this thing that I want to do, and I'll do evil shit to get there. But these extra layers, and again, it really comes back to Isabel Fuhrman is just a fucking flamethrower. Like, just without her, this movie might be lost to the $5 bin of history. Like, who
Mm-hmm.
knows?
Yeah, it's kind of shocking that it works as well as it does. And I love that. That just, it gives me hope.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
like
when this was coming out to streaming, were you in any way like, oh no?
totally, because it's one of
Yeah.
those things, and it's just like, really, why? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this again? Like, we've seen this so many times in horror, like, not
Mhm.
interested in these stories that are going to try to make me feel bad for this really terrible character. Like, I don't need to.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a joy to be like, all right, I stand corrected. Like, you put me in my place. Like, you know what you're doing. All
Oh, for
right.
sure.
Like, I
It's
judged it,
probably the
but
most pleasantly surprised I've ever. It's like the inverse of when I went to see Prometheus, where I was convinced. I saw the trailer. I was like, Prometheus is probably going to be my new favorite movie. Like, I was
yeah.
expecting that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and then I just, which is funny because Dave, who wrote this movie, the other MVP of the movie, it's him and Isabel Furman.
Yeah.
He fucking loves Prometheus, and we've had a lot of arguments over that movie. But what we cannot argue about is that his script for this movie is fucking amazing.
It is. It's great because there were so many things I didn't expect it to do, and it's just so smart to kind of play on those expectations, like we've kind of say. And like I would always rather be like, I hate getting my expectations like super high for a film. Like, that hype train
Right.
is a dangerous thing, because sometimes then you go into
Great
it
point.
thinking something's going to be like really amazing, and no matter how good it is, like it's not, the most amazing thing ever. It's just
Yeah.
great, and that's fine. But it
You
can
feel
be,
mad you can't get as up as other people. So you're like,
yeah,
it was
like
a fine movie.
yeah, like for me,
Yeah.
that's kind of bit
It's
me in the
that
ass
unfair
a few
shit you bring
times.
into the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and so sometimes going in with really low expectations is great, because then it's like,
Oh, man.
that wasn't awful. I love it.
I know. I feel bad because Dave's my buddy, but I was just like, when I heard about it, I'd forgotten it was a thing.
Yeah,
And when it's like, it's on Paramount today, I was like, oh, God. I was like, all
Yeah.
right, well, I guess
Yeah.
I'll watch this. And then just, what a fucking ride, man. What a ride.
Yeah. It's and like
Awesome.
for it to be like on streaming too, I thought that was kind of like, I've thought a lot about, like, should this have been like released in theaters, and like, was it fair to put it right on streaming? And I don't know. I think it would have actually done pretty good if it had been in theaters, especially once the word got out, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Not mad about it being on
Yeah.
streaming. I think it.
Well, the
Look
nice
it.
thing about the streaming release, it's also just the world we live in, right? A lot of these kind of
Yeah.
mid-size movies are going to get dropped into streaming now.
Yeah.
The nice thing about streaming for this one
Mhm.
is a lot of people can get to it immediately before you kind of spoil the twist.
Totally.
And
Yep,
when we
yep.
watch it and we're like, oh my God, Orphan First Kill fucking rips,
Mhm.
someone can go right to their couch and watch it immediately.
Yep.
Right, so
Paramount
there's-
Plus. Paramount
Yeah,
Plus, guys.
Paramount Plus represent. There's a lot of energy to that if a movie's done well,
Yeah.
you can really capitalize on that wave. Now, again, I'm not wise enough to talk about the financial implications of all that kind of industry shit.
Mhm.
My brain barely does money thoughts, period. But on just like a fun level, it was fun to watch it and then get on and see this tidal wave of enthusiasm build and build and build for the weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, just what a shocker of a film. Like one
Yeah.
of the most pleasantly surprised experiences I've had in years watching a movie.
Yeah. Did the effects, like the her being the perspective shots and trying to make her look shorter than she actually is, did that work for you? Was it
For
good,
the
passable?
most part, I thought they did a really good job. The one thing that I noticed, because I thought they did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
The one thing is there's like 4 shots of the dad coming out of a door where he
Yeah.
has to like duck under a door.
Yeah.
And then you cut to the kitchen with like the little body double. And I'm like, that guy's like 5'10". Right? So I'm like, he goes from like Hodor to just like a dad.
Yeah.
But again, I thought it was pretty fucking impressive.
Right? I thought it was.
There's a
it worked
great
way
cast
better than
photo
I
of
thought.
all of them on their various height platform boots standing next
Mhm.
to Isabel Furman. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, fuck yeah. I think that's crazy that they just went for it.
Yeah, and then
Loved
using
it.
like an actual like child for scenes where it's just like
they
the back
could
of
have
her
done
head
that
or
Marlon
whatever.
Wayans movie, The Little Man, right? Where
Oh,
they just put her
God.
face on a kid's body. But no.
Thank God.
They went old school and figured out some practical ways to make it work. And yeah, again, I think she's so amazing that she just has this gravity that not a lot of actors have, that like when she's on screen, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't really give a fuck like about anything else that's happening for the most part. And Julia Stiles weirdly like keeps pace with her. So yeah, I just thought this movie just kind of crushes on every level.
Yeah.
I really loved it.
Yep. Should not have worked at all. Should have been awful, but it's not. And I love that. And I'm so happy for it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it, guys. We hope you loved it as much as we did. Dave, thank you for this movie, man. My good friend, I love Dave. Legendary first baseman for the Spoilers. If you play softball in Burbank and Glendale, you remember us, multiple time champions. Great guy. His wife actually is also a fantastic writer. They both have been on the Blacklist together.
Nice.
She directed her first horror movie, Bed Rest. Right? So her movie came out last year as well, I think. Just great people. Awesome people. They have lovely kids who are not murderers. So sending some love to Dave. I hope you listen to this. I love you guys. Rachel, we love you too. Thank you for spending some time with us. You're always amazing on the show. Would you like to remind everyone where they can find your stuff? And
Sure.
If you have any projects you want to plug coming up, go for it.
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Vinyl Girl, GRRL, or Instagram at The Vinyl Girl. And yeah, I'll post all my writing there. But yeah, I'll have a couple interviews coming out. One with John Massari, composer for Killer Clowns.
Yeah, you interview a lot of composers.
I
really
talk to a lot of music folks.
That's how I first found you. I read your interview about Predator, and we talked about Predator.
Yeah. Oh, classic. Yeah. One of my faves. And then, I got another interview coming out on Dread Central with Alan Howarth. So that was super fun to do those two guys back to back. So those will be coming out soon on Dread Central.
Amazing. Yeah, and make sure to find all of Rachel's podcast stuff. We'll have all of her information in the show notes. Thank you again for making the time. Guys, you know the deal in October. 31 days, 31 pods. So we'll see you tomorrow with another awesome conversation with one of our amazing horror-loving friends. It's the best time of the year, guys. We can't wait to see you again tomorrow.